What would a world without the World Wide Web be like? Well, without Hypercard, that could have been a reality. Hello, I'm Jacob, and today I'm talking about Hypercard and its influence on media. You're listening to WJHS 91.5 The Eagle. Welcome to Media in the Making, a podcast where we look at the evolution of media from 1600 all the way to present day. In this podcast series, we ask, how have different forms of media evolved and changed culture? Media in the Making, where media and culture are always changing. Now, let's take a step back in time, all the way back to the 80s. In 1987, a software called Hypercard came out. It was made for the earliest of computers, and it came free on the Apple Macintosh, which Hypercard was created by Bill Atkinson, and he gave it to Apple with the agreement that it would be free on all Macintoshes. But if you didn't happen to have a Macintosh, it was $49.95 for any other regular computer. Hypercard was said to have low floors and high ceilings. This means that it is easier for beginners to learn, but experts still had new things to learn and do. But what were the things that you could do? You could create stacks of cards, which was visual pages on the screen. You could also insert fields, which was text, tables, and images. You can even install buttons, which linked other cards to each other, or played sounds when clicked. You can even install these buttons onto pictures. Hypercard has even been used to control the lights of a skyscraper. The Petronas Towers had some of their lights controlled by Hypercard. A lot of other things have been done with Hypercard. They've even made games on Hypercard. A really popular game called Myst was created using Hypercard. It was a game originally made for Macintoshes, but soon after its creation, a lot of the early computers and a bunch of early gaming platforms got a hold of it, and even today it's on the Xbox One and the Oculus Quest. But how was Hypercard able to do all these things? What was the brains behind it? Its scripting language had a huge role in this. It was called HyperTalk. It was originally made for Hypercard, and it was a pretty simple scripting language, which is what made Hypercard very good for beginner coders. Many people have said it's a gateway to programming because it helps people get interested and get started in programming, and it helps people get comfortable with coding. Even an Apple engineer said that Hypercard was the only reason that he got into programming. Hypercard also influenced many softwares and their development. Wiki, for example, the foundation of Wikipedia, was made because the developer was inspired by Hypercard. Another would be Samantha John, co-creator of the children's programming tool Hopscotch, said that it was the reason, and it was like what inspired her software that she was building, which was a programming tool made for children, and it was even designed similar to Hypercard and looked similar. Another thing Hypercard had an influence on was HTTPS and the making of the World Wide Web. But what happened to Hypercard? Well, it saw major popularity from the 80s to the 90s, but eventually with new softwares coming out and even some were inspired by Hypercard, its downfall was starting to happen. It was pushed out of the way from the new softwares and it just wasn't getting the same attention it was used to. It was outdated and technology had gotten better since its release, and it was starting to get old. It eventually stopped getting updates in 1998, and ultimately Apple stopped selling it completely in 2004. Although Hypercard is not for sale anymore, many of the softwares that were influenced by Hypercard are still around. Some of these include, like mentioned earlier, Wikipedia, Hopscotch, HTTPS, and the World Wide Web. Even though many people don't know what Hypercard is or have even ever heard of it, it made a very big difference in media and the web as it is today. Media in the Making is brought to you by WJHS 91.5 and the Eagle Tech Academy media classes. Media in the Making, teaching about the evolution of media throughout history and its effects on culture. For more from the students, more podcast series are on the 91.5 website, WJHS91.5.org. Thank you for joining us.